is a gentleman who has very deep Fort Wayne roots. I knew his grandparents very well. They were entrepreneurs, uncles entrepreneurs, and his mom is an entrepreneur. He didn't grow up in this Fort Wayne area. He grew up in Arizona, where they have different type of black people. Mr. Dufor, would you please come up and compare and contrast the blacks in Arizona versus here in terms of the individual initiative side of things? Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Brent Dufor, and as Mr. Hackley mentioned, I did spend a lot of years in Arizona. I actually did grow up in the Fort Wayne area to a certain point. When I was 11 years old, I moved to L.A. to live with my mom and my stepfather, Marzine Moore and Sheila Moore. And then we, shortly after that, moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I stayed primarily until I was about 30 years old, 29 or 30 years old. I moved back to the Fort Wayne area. Before I give a contrast and comparison to Phoenix and Fort Wayne, just like to give you a little bit of background on, not on myself, but by giving a background on myself, I have to talk a bit about my grandparents and my family. On my father's side, my grandfather was a foreman in a foundry here in Fort Wayne. His name is Alfonso Hines. He was a foreman for over 40 years, and he made his way up through the ranks over that time period when it was very difficult. And he raised a family that is strong in the community and now strong in the country, as a matter of fact. And my grandfather on my mother's side is, his name is Welton Dufor, and he did always believe in making, he had a saying that a man had to have a job, and then he had to have something else to provide for his family. And in that he meant that if you had a full-time job, you also had to, especially as a black man, you had to go out and do something else to provide for your family in order for them to grow and flourish and to go to college and achieve other heights in life. So what he did, he worked at Fruhoff for almost 40 years, and he was a welder at Fruhoff for that time period, and he started a number of businesses, two of which that I can remember when I was a child. One was a hardware store. It was on Lewis and Ohio Street, and it remained there for a number of years, and it was a staple in the community. And a second business that he had was a security business where he made security bars for people's homes, and he had a lot of sayings. And one was that you must always provide a service or a product for someone that is necessary and that you're not creating duplication. Now, he didn't use those exact words, but he basically said, don't open a barbecue stand across the street from another barbecue stand. You need to do something that people need and that they have to have. So he also had a pest control service that's still up and operating today by one of his sons. Derek Dufor operates the pest control service. So with that mind frame, his children, and now his grandchildren also, but his children went into life looking at it as, we will always have two jobs in life. We'll always work, but then we'll also try to provide for our families through entrepreneurships or creative legal activities to enhance our own lives and those around us and employ the people that lived and worked around us. In the home that I grew up in on Lewis Street, there was always, and I mean always, people employed in and around my home. He actually had a welding shop in his garage, and he would hire youngsters from the community and teach them how to weld. He would teach them how to measure and do different things in order to create the security bars for homes and businesses. And he would lay a foundation of discipline and workmanship that there are many people that are in this community right now that come up to me and say, hey, I worked for your grandfather when I was a young man, and some of the things that he taught me I still utilize today in my home, and I passed them on to my children. So and I also learned those trades as a grandson of his. So I am very grateful for my family's and both sides of my family's teachings and the lessons that they have provided for me. Now, like I said, when I was around 11 years old, I did move to Los Angeles, California, and it was a great experience at that age. And then shortly after, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And what I found was that contrasting to the Fort Wayne area, there were even fewer African Americans to be seen. And it was almost as segregated, maybe more so than the Fort Wayne community, but they seemed to have a voice. So as I was growing up and going to high school and then later on to college, I realized that these African Americans in this community have a pretty strong voice, and you don't see that many of them. What I realized was, after a few years, I realized that most of the people in Arizona, or at least the Phoenix area, they are not what they call natives of that town. Where they moved from, their first generation of people from Chicago, New York, and some of the larger cities and colder weather areas that decided and made a choice to move out west, and they picked Phoenix, Arizona to move to. So when they moved, they became socially and politically active in their communities and in their city government. And when I moved back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, I had it in my mindset that I would become politically active also. And one of the very first things I did was register to vote here locally. And once I registered to vote, the year that I came back, the mayoral race turned out to be, I believe, what was the difference?
Less than one person per precinct.
It was somewhere around 75 people or 50 people made the difference in the mayor winning locally here. And I was very proud that I voted, because I won essentially the election, or the guy that I was voting for. And shortly after that, I found myself in a turmoil in the community where government was looking to do some things in my neighborhood that I lived in. I came back to be politically active, but not really. That just to me meant to vote and have a voice and say and take my part in the community as a black man, and make sure that I voiced my opinion when it was necessary. Well, what happened was the local government had been doing some activities that the community I lived in was not too happy with. So, and the communication had broken down at the point. So what we did was, as a community, we kind of mounted up our forces and became vocal and against the city of Fort Wayne, I guess it was at the time, and our voices were heard. And there was one time we had almost 300 people at a meeting, and it basically shut the meeting down. And it really, at that time, I knew that this works. It is possible to be politically active and have your voices be heard to really get the outcome that you're trying to reach. And it wasn't too long after that I got a telephone call by the chief elected official that we had been fighting against, and asking me to come and be part of his team. And that's where I work right now. And so currently I work for the city of Fort Wayne. I tell people that I believe I got my job by being a community activist, and the chief elected official at the time, or it still is, Mayor Graham Richards, said, I think I'd like to have a guy on my team versus fighting against me, and have a voice of the community in our local government also, and that's where I currently work.
Okay, Mr. Dufor, just had a couple questions to follow up on some of the things that you were talking about. One of the things you were talking about, or you at least alluded to it, was when you're talking about your grandparents, it was kind of a different day when your grandfather said that everybody should have a skill or provide a service and don't copy someone else. It seems like people have taken the reverse philosophy, where they want to pick your brain and see what you do and steal your ideas. Why are people afraid to be original?
Well, I can't answer that for all people, but I do know that as far as picking your brain and for people being afraid that your idea will be stolen, is because one of the challenges that I see working for local government, one of the challenges that I see is that we have a lot of different factions doing, or organizations doing the same thing, but not necessarily working together. I'm sure you've heard that before. And we have a small group of people that we're serving, and there may be a considerable amount of people that we may be serving, but a lot of times we may be afraid that if we share our information and how we're doing what we're doing so well maybe with another group, that they may steal some of our flock. So what I work at doing is helping people to understand that by working together we can become stronger. One of the areas that, and it's not necessarily business, but it is somewhat, one of the areas that I work a lot in is in nonprofit management, grant writing, and accessing funds for nonprofit organizations and educational institutions. And what we find in the nonprofit world is that the one nonprofit organization doesn't like to share their numbers or share their list of information with another nonprofit organization that may be doing comparable services. What is very important for those organizations to know is that if they are both applying for funds, for federal funds, private funds, or any type of dollars, that funding organization will want to see that they are working with other groups. But they don't tell them directly a lot of times, because we know that, for example, it is a lot easier if my expertise as an organization is in education, then that's what they want to see me doing. They want to see me educating a student, whereas another organization may have an expertise in will have a daycare facility, and then another one may have an expertise in many different areas. Well, they want to see that person get rounded, but person be a well-rounded, self-sustaining individual, but they want to see you working with all these different groups. And if you will work with a lot of different peoples, it'll make your organization all the stronger, and it'll make everybody else in that individual a more rounded person.
Okay, and one last question. In terms of being an activist or being involved in this community, there's another reluctance there among a lot of people, a lot of young people. A lot of people don't want to be bothered because they say that it's a waste of time and you can't make an impact here anyway. Mm-hmm. What do you say to them, or as you try to talk to them, that might turn your hair totally white as black now. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you get the point across to them that they have to step up to the plate and do something?
Well, the first thing that I tell people is you don't necessarily have to join a group. The first thing you do is you do something yourself. And by far, if each one teaches one, or if each person goes out and helps another individual, then you've started your own personal ball rolling. Once you get involved in something that you find that you get that feeling of love or enjoyment or gratification out of helping, then it will become easier for the individual to go out and get with the other group of people, because you'll naturally be drawn to find other people that are doing what you're doing. Mentoring is a great example of that. If you will mentor and be responsible for a younger person, or you may have a little brother or sister that you may not have in the past spent adequate amount of time with. The idea is what is projected outside as being active in a group may not necessarily be the way you have to go about it. You start doing something yourself. Do something around your home, with your family, reach out to your neighborhood, then your community at a large, and then you can go and do something in a citywide, maybe fashion, or maybe nationwide.
Okay, is that in practice now, or is that mostly theory, in that people can actually see that whole process and to where they would want to get involved? Because what we're seeing here a whole lot is for years Fort Wayne has been very apathetic. Mm-hmm. And people stronger than us have tried to change things. Of course, we're changing things, and we're going to do it this time. But why is that? I mean, there's got to be something there that's making people doubt what you just said, even though you have proof that it's happening right now.
My personal philosophy is, once again, do something on an individual basis. I think that once a person receives the gift of giving, he'll start to draw naturally other givers. And there are people in organizations like churches that are doing programs and that are giving that you'll be drawn towards, because you'll want to reach out to other people that are doing positive things. And you can't change people. People have to change people. So if a person, an individual person, can just start to do a little bit on their own, even at the elementary, middle, or high school level, by the time they reach college, then they'll be part of the Black Student Union or the helping organizations that we all want them to join, and they'll be part of their church organizations, the NAACPs and the urban leagues and all of these active organizations that we see on a national basis. But we as parents, we teach our children to give, and that the gift is really in the giving, and they'll naturally want to be around that later in life. That's my personal philosophy on the best way to go about it. And I don't try to preach to young people about going out and doing things. I just tell them to do something that's easy and close to them, that they can actually have passion in and see some immediate results. That's the safest way to go about it, and that's the way, from my experience, I've done it.
Thank you very much.